Is Star Trek right about humanity? I just got struck with this idea for a little rant, and I just kind of wanted to talk it out here. Those of you who like Star Trek already know that they have a lot to say about humanity, human nature, the human condition, etc. I mean, the whole show is depending on the series, but most of them are a morality play looking at, different situations that humanity encounters and, how we deal with them and how, ideally, a better humanity could handle many situations. They also tend to use other species in the galaxy as a great way to demonstrate current problems or failings that we experience and, how they can be overcome, or perhaps they don't even give an answer and they simply present it in a new light. Regardless, what strikes my interest today is that many of these species throughout the universe of Star Trek tend to depict a particular bent. A lot of them seem to have this innate thing that makes them special. Everyone is an individual. Everyone on an individual level can be as complex or as, uncomplex as the writer desires or as, they can be. But on the whole, most of the species in Star Trek tend to embody a particular stereotype. For instance, Klingons are, of course, the warring conquerors. They very much, admire honor and conquest above all else. The Ferengi are commerce and trade, the idea of economic growth and stability. And, the Vulcans are logic, which sometimes is debatable, given what they consider to be logical, but then again, the Romulans also embody what the Vulcan race could have been without that imposition of what they believe logic is. Basically, they're space elves. They're hyper-emotional, they're stronger than humanity by default, but they're extremely long-lived, but also they tend to have their own failings, whereas a human might overreact to something and, ruin a day. A Romulan, when a former pre-logic Vulcan, would overreact to something and, cause massive chaos across years. All of the races in Star Trek tend to have a particular bent to which their culture moves. But what about humanity? Well, a layman watching might think that humanity has nothing particularly special about it. After all, it doesn't need to. They're the vessel by which we, the audience, get to see the future, this optimistic future. And while they're otherwise just a more optimistic version of humanity, they are humanity. They still have just as much diversity in terms of culture, in terms of values as we do today, albeit, with a much more accepting bent towards it and a much more open-minded viewpoint, depending on, which episode and series you're talking about. I'm primarily focusing, by the way, on TNG, DS9, Voyager, that kind of stuff. But, and I've taken way too long to get here, what if I told you Star Trek does portray an overall bent towards humanity? Something that humanity has that drives it far more than the other races. Just as hard as Klingons are driven by conquest and war and honor. Just as hard as Ferengi are driven by commerce and the need to trade and acquire. What if I told you that humanity is driven by curiosity? Now that sounds pretty straightforward. I mean, there are explorers in all cultures in the series, but let me explain what I mean. Especially in Deep Space Nine, they tend to touch on what exactly makes humans different from the other races. And it seems to be that most of the other races are not nearly as obsessed with acquiring information, not nearly as obsessed with uncovering as many mysteries as possible and going out and exploring. Sure, there are explorers in all cultures, but they usually have a reason other than, I'm going out to look around. Humanity will just go and look for things, just for the sake of saying, I went there and I saw it. And that's what makes them so unique in terms of a species. You know what I mean? Culturally speaking, every major human group that we encounter has its own culture, but underpinning all of that, this general species drive is to go out and explore and to find and to see and, ultimately to experience what's out there. A lot of the other races even comment on how strangely obsessed humanity is in the Star Trek universe with just looking around for the sake of looking around. To Vulcans, it's illogical. It, seems like just fanciful wanderlust. For the Klingons, it's, they would understand if we're going out to conquer, but just going out to go out doesn't seem to make much sense. And Ferengi absolutely understand the need to acquire, but maybe not acquire information of questionable value, especially not going out for the sake of just seeing something that's out there. I mean, if you're prospecting, that's one thing, but to a Ferengi, just to go out without any possible chance of return, without any, hey, you're not going out there looking for potentially valuable resources or trade, you're just going out there, that's completely just foreign to them in general. And yet humanity seems to embody this very, very well. And I don't think this goes against real humanity at all. In fact, humans across cultures, across borders, seem to all have a similar bent towards finding things out and mysteries. Why do you think ghost stories are so popular? Hear me out, this is connected. Humanity loves to tell tales of mysterious and unknown things. Think about the SCP Foundation. Think about all those analog horror series. Think about how much we tend to look into unknown things. UFOs, Missing 411, all that kind of stuff. Unsolved mysteries, true crime. Humans love to look into things that are inherently mysterious. Humans like to learn about things they don't know. And we all tend to move towards different sorts of things. Some people consume massive amounts of lore for a fictional series. Some people love to obsess over a particular type of vehicle or a particular job or even history. But almost every human I've ever met has something that drives them to look further into a subject to an almost obsessed degree. Almost everybody has that. There's exceptions, of course. There are genuinely people who are simply content and, don't feel the need or the drive to look too heavily into something, but almost everyone has a hobby that necessitates uncovering things. And I find that Star Trek's insinuation that that's what makes humanity unique on, as a species in the universe, especially in the context of the rest of Star Trek, is pretty good. I think that's a fairly solid assertion. No, I'm not saying that means that, if we one day discover other life out there that they can't have this. In fact, maybe this is something that intelligent life merely trends towards, continuously looking for and resolving patterns and trying to collect information. Who knows? Maybe that is what underpins sapience. We still don't fully know, and only God can answer that one. But regardless, I think that it's a very good depiction of humanity. We do genuinely just want to learn things. We do genuinely go out of our way to try and find information. And I think that that's pretty neat. I don't know. This is more of a short rant, but I was thinking about it. I was thinking about how different series depict humanity, especially series that allow humans to be playable or follow along with things like Star Trek, things like D&D or Star Wars, or pretty much anything else that allows you to play as a human or follow the story of a human in a universe where there's other sapient and sentient species and humanity is not necessarily the main character, as it were. They tend towards just being an everyman, but Star Trek goes ahead and asserts that, well, no, they're not an everyman. They do have something like the other species that seems to drive them as a species. That's curiosity. They want to just learn. And I think that that's a pretty good way to go about it. Don't get me wrong, you can absolutely use humanity as the everyman in your setting, power to you. And that can be a pretty decent way to put an average reader or a viewer in the shoes of a person on screen, oh, hey, that's a human like me. I can relate to being a human. Also, yeah, okay. Everyone else, by contrast to this roughly everyman character, or, roughly average person, even if they're slightly above average than a normal human, hey, that character over there is incredibly strong by nature of being an orc. That person over there is incredibly wise, as befitting, an elf or a Vulcan or a, what have you. But at the end of the day, I think it is good, narratively, to give humanity something that makes it unique unto itself. Anyway, I just thought I'd rant about that a little bit. I thought it was an interesting little idea. I just kind of, got hit with the idea of, wait a minute, Star Trek really does have humans doing something unique. And I just thought I'd talk about it. Anyway, thank you for listening, especially if you've listened this far to my random ramble that I've decided to post. And thank you for listening to my voice.